Again, I'm Sarah Catherine Dugan. Georgia Kappelman and I are representing the state of Florida in this case. And this is the defendant, Donna Adelson. We see her here at the defense table, and this is how she appeared back in 2014 when this crime occurred 11 years ago. And the reason that we're here today is because this defendant, Donna Adelson, was part of a conspiracy to hire a hitman to kill her former son-in-law, Dan Markel. This murder was set into motion because back in 2014, this defendant's family had a big problem. And the big problem was Dan Markel. And the solution to that problem was the defendant's son, Charlie Adelson. Charlie Adelson was the solution because he had a girlfriend with connections to the type of people who were willing and capable of pointing a gun at a complete stranger and pulling the trigger.
He had a girlfriend with connections. I mean, imagine if you're coming at this cold. What sort of picture do you have in your mind? Not quite the one in real life, is it? Katie McBanower. He had a girlfriend with connections, the type of people that get the job done.
The victim in this case, Dan Markel, was known as Danny to his friends and family. He was a loving father to 2 little boys, and he was a highly respected law professor at Florida State University College of Law. Tragically, on July 18th of 2014, Dan Markel was shot in the head.
Donna Adelson had a big problem, and that big problem was Dan Markel. Doesn't that sound like the movie, the movie trailer voice guy? This summer, Donna Adelson's big problem. That'd be brilliant with the big dramatic music, the feature of the year.
In broad daylight, in the driveway of his home in the Benton Hills neighborhood here in Tallahassee. The last day of his life began like any other day of his that summer. He woke up, he took his 2 young sons to preschool, and then he went to the gym to work out.
Yeah, his day was the same as any other day for Big Problem Dan Markel. Trying to be reasonable with Wendy, having to listen to her be a crazy bitch, and, just be abused. It was another day of abuse for Dan Markel.
After finishing his workout, he returned home. He pulled into his driveway and he opened his garage. But little did he know that throughout his entire routine that morning, he was being followed by 2 hired hitmen who traveled all the way to Tallahassee from Miami.
Doesn't his house look like a kind of World War II bunker? On Omaha Beach. It's a pity he didn't install some sort of gun turret on the roof there. It's a strange house. I'm not sure I like it at all. I like windows. We go next door to Mr. Geiger's house. He's got a big window, bay window. Fancy.
For the sole purpose of taking his life. And like something out of a horror movie, when he pulled into his driveway, the killers pulled in right behind him. Moments later, Dan Markel's neighbor heard a gunshot, and he looked out the window and saw a light-colored Toyota Prius back quickly out of Dan Markel's driveway and speed away. The neighbor thought that was very unusual, very suspicious, so he waited a second to see if Dan Markel also backed out of his driveway or came out of his house.
The neighbor thought that the Prius was very suspicious because, in northeast Tallahassee and Benton Hills, he would have thought that people could afford a better car.
House, and when he didn't see him, The neighbor got, a very funny feeling. And he went over to Dan Markel's open garage to see if there was anything wrong. And he found a gruesome scene. Dan Markel's car window, his driver's side window, was shattered. His glasses and his phone were on the ground next to his car. And Dan Markel was behind the wheel. He was unresponsive and moaning and terribly injured. The neighbor called 911 and law enforcement arrived to find Dan Markel.
I wouldn't have used the phrase behind the wheel there. That sounds like he was in control. There's nothing wrong with in the driver's seat. Well, I don't know.
Markel with a gunshot wound to the head. He was taken to the hospital where he survived for about 14 hours before he was pronounced dead. Dan Markel was only 41 years old. And his little boys, who were deprived of their father after this murder.
Look at the X-ray of his skull. I mean, I think if you zoom in, you can see a copy of the Constitution, or some law manual, some manuscript he's been working on. We the people.
Is dead. Dan Markel was only 41 years old. And his little boys, who were deprived of their father after this murder, were just 3 and 4 years old. Bless you. Law enforcement began to investigate to try to figure out who did this, who shot Dan Markel. This
next slide is a great example of General Isom's brain during the beginning stages of the investigation. What does it say?
Law enforcement began to investigate.
Okay. This is the sort of brilliance that just pops into General Isom's mind while he's, coloring in a children's menu at his favorite diner, waiting for waffles. Motive? Shooters in Prius? Yeah. No, it's a good starting place. It is, really. But, I just love how it seems to be purposefully summed up with a General Isom mental acuity that we've all come to know and love, right? Motive? Shooters in Prius?
To try to figure out who did this, who shot Dan Markel. The scene there, the crime scene, left no trace of the killers. There was no fingerprints, no DNA, no bullet casing, nothing was stolen. And so police began to suspect that this may be a professional killing. The little evidence that they do have sends them down 2 separate paths. One path is to track down that light-colored Prius that the neighbor saw fleeing from the scene. And the other is to identify
The first path was to track down that out-of-place budget economy car in a well-to-do neighborhood.
who was inside that Prius. And the other path relates to motive. Who in Dan Markel's life would hate him enough to hire a professional killer to kill him?
I love it. I'd love it if Judge Everett just popped up, made eye contact with the jury, and started pointing at Donna and smiling. She's right there.
And after years of tireless investigation, both of these paths led directly to this defendant. So, first let's talk about the path involving motive. We'll go down both paths this morning. Police investigated Dan Markel's personal life to try to figure out a motive in this case, to see who might want him dead. And they learned that Dan Markel was entangled in a very nasty divorce with his ex-wife.
That's General Isom's third thought. Motive? Shooters in Prius? Nasty divorce.
Who is the defendant's daughter? And his ex-wife is named Wendy Adelson. A review of the divorce case file reveals that Wendy Adelson...
It's Jill now, Sarah, okay?
...had asked the court to allow her to relocate to Miami, where she was from and where her parents lived, with her children, and Dan Markel's children, in order to be closer to her mother, Donna Adelson, to her father, whose name is Harvey Adelson, and to her brother, whose name is Charlie Adelson. The victim, Dan Markel, as y'all can imagine, is adamantly opposed to this, to his children being relocated to Miami. He works here in Tallahassee. He's a law professor here in Tallahassee. This is where he lives. This is where his kids have been raised. He wants his children here with him. A review by law enforcement of Wendy Adelson's emails made it clear that her mother, the defendant, hated Dan Markel and was the relentless driving force behind Wendy's relocation efforts to South Florida. And being a caring and involved parent is great, but the defendant's participation in her children's lives went beyond mere involvement or even meddling. She was extremely controlling. She had very strong opinions about all the decisions in Wendy Adelson's life, whether it be about her career, her relationships, or even purchasing a home. And if Wendy Adelson would not do as the defendant wanted her to do, the defendant often then enlisted Charlie Adelson, her son, Wendy's brother, to solve the problem by getting him to kind of go to Wendy and persuade Wendy until Wendy ultimately agreed to do what the defendant wanted her to do.
Hey, Michelle, how's it going? Good to see you and everybody else. Black Eagle, Coach's Style, S Free 2021. Christina, Leah, Wendy, Fletcher, Donna's Banana Bread, California, Amy, DJ Miller, and GSD's Dog Mom. Welcome back, Metrix.
And while the defendant had always been controlling of her children's lives, the emails uncovered by law enforcement showed that this defendant was desperate to find a way for Wendy and Dan Markel's children, her grandchildren, to be able to relocate to Miami. The defendant told Wendy that she deserved more than just a life teaching in Tallahassee without her family, and that Dan Markel was essentially holding her hostage in Tallahassee because of his job. During the divorce and custody battle, the defendant's email showed that she was heavily involved in Wendy's court case, even going so far as to draft and edit the documents that Wendy and her attorney were filing in court, and emailing Wendy instructions for her attorney.
Well, she needed a project, you know? Some people put together photo albums or, embroidery. I don't know. I mean, just let her get on with it. She needs something to do.
On arguments her attorney should make and what her attorney should do. The defendant would guilt trip Wendy Adelson about how much time she and her husband, Harvey Adelson, were having to spend away from their dental practice to visit Wendy and the grandkids in Tallahassee, and complain about how the family was losing income, losing patients because of their constant absences from the practice. And the defendant instructed Wendy Adelson that relocation to Miami was the most important priority in this divorce, and if it had to be her non-negotiable in the divorce. In June of 2013, the judge in the divorce case ended up ruling in Dan Markel's favor. And not only did the judge deny Wendy's relocation motion, but the judge dismissed it in a way that prevented Wendy Adelson from requesting the relocation again. So Wendy would not be permitted to move to Miami to be close to the defendant and her husband with the children at that time or ever. Unless of course, something happened to Dan Markel. After the judge denied the relocation motion, after that was denied, the defendant told Wendy Adelson in emails that Dan Markel has not beaten the Adelson family yet. She let Wendy know that the Adelson family is a team and they are trying to win. Donna Adelson suggested in her emails several bribes to get Dan Markel to agree to relocation, like plane tickets, paying for her grandson's education, and the defendant even suggested offering Dan Markel a $1 million bribe to allow the relocation, to let Wendy move to Miami with the boys.
Michelle says, "You guys won't believe this, but my fucking living room TV is broken." Oh, the irony. It's 14 years old, but damn it. So that would actually be older than Wendy's TV. Actually, hang on. When did she move out of the house? 2012, or was it 2011? Imagine if it was the same TV, like the same, not the exact same one, but make and model. We still don't know what make and model it was. Is it a cracked screen? I'll tell you what you need to do, Michelle. You need to call Best Buy. They've got a service called the Geek Squad. They'll come right out. They'll rub a special oil on the TV and make that crack disappear.
If the bribes didn't work, the defendant also suggested several ways that Wendy could threaten or bully Dan Markel into submission. The defendant told Wendy to aggravate Dan Markel like he aggravates you. And the defendant set out a plan of action that the defendant told Wendy would make Dan Markel absolutely miserable. And she's detailing all of these in her emails. So, for the plan of action, the defendant knew that Dan Markel was devoutly Jewish. So she came up with the idea for Wendy to pose Dan Markel's sons for pictures in front of a Catholic church, and then post the pictures to social media, and even announce on social media she was getting the children baptized, just to make it appear to Dan Markel that she was changing their religion. The defendant assured Wendy Adelson that this would all be an act to get Dan Markel to agree to let her move to Miami, but told Wendy Adelson that in order to pull off this stunt, she had to put on the acting performance of her life. The defendant said that it did not matter to her if Wendy had to dress her two little toddlers up in Nazi or SS uniforms, as long as she was...
I mean, obviously in incredibly bad taste, but I do think there's something quite funny about a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old being dressed in SS uniforms, which were designed by Hugo Boss, I believe. The original uniforms for the SS branch of the Nazi party. I wonder if anyone's ever done that. I guess so.
was able to get them to South Florida and show.
I want to get a fucking two-year-old child and dress him up in a Ku Klux Klan outfit, you know, with the hood and everything. I mean, you know, carrying a burning cross. Oh, what else could we do? All right, we got the KKK, the SS. Why is it all multiples of the same letter? Is that the thing for a evil organization? The BBB, the DD, the double D. I don't know. It could be. What could it be? What else? KKK, SS. Another. It doesn't have to be, you know, one letter. Doesn't even have to be letters. What's another evil organization that we could dress a 2-year-old in? I don't know. The Viet Cong.
Dan Markel that he was not in control. The defendant repeatedly told Wendy Adelson that the rest of her life, meaning Wendy's life, as well as the defendant's life, Harvey Adelson's life, and Charlie Adelson's life, depended on Wendy Adelson and the boys being able to relocate to Miami. And the defendant said that she would never give up and never stop fighting for Wendy and the boys to be relocated to Miami. And she never did. The evidence in this case will show you that this defendant's closest confidant was her son, Charlie Adelson. She and Charlie Adelson talk multiple times a day, every day. And he was the person with whom she would constantly vent and complain to about Wendy's situation here in Tallahassee, having to live in Tallahassee with her sons. And she would often, the defendant would use very dramatic life and death terms to describe it. The defendant portrayed Dan Markel to Charlie Adelson as a...
You know all of the embarrassing shit that comes out about you if you're on trial? Like, obviously the wiretaps, sex calls, you know, if I'm Charlie Adelson, all the time that I'm being cross-examined by Georgia Kappelman, I'm going to be looking at her and thinking, oh my God, she's seen my dick pics. She's had open access to all of my dick pics. She knows me better than anybody else in this room right now because she's seen my dick pics. But I think for me, if I was in Charlie Adelson's position, that wouldn't be the thing that I was most embarrassed by. It wouldn't even be that call that he had with that girl who was saying, Charlie, you're terrible in bed. It would be the thing that I would find most, embarrassing. I don't know what, it would be the fact that you call your fucking mother multiple times a day. What is that? Nobody does that. Nobody. That's horrible.
Crazy person who was impossible to deal with and was causing an extreme amount of stress to Donna Adelson and her husband, Harvey Adelson. And Charlie Adelson was also the person that Donna Adelson relied on to solve her problems. And her daughter...
Michelle says, BBB, Better Business Bureau. Yeah, now I'm having flashbacks to the Travis Alexander prepaid legal MLM events, Because when they're coming up for the program for those events, all they do is find you know, a list of occasions. I don't even know if you'd call them occasions, but, you know, a list of, what would be the word? Let's call them occasions. Any occasions that begin with the letter B, right? And then they put business in front of that word, and that is the program. So, for instance, Ryan Burns would tell us, well, in the morning we had the business briefing. Then it was the business brunch. And that was followed by, in the evening, we all attended the business banquet and ball. I mean, you know, there's no way that's not what the, you know, those people that come up with those concepts for multi-level marketing that are designed to attract people in as, you know, extra perks. You know, hey, if you sign up, not only do you get a wild opportunity, but you also get invited to all these events, which we call the best business briefing, business banquet, ball, brunch, and bistro. You know, which are always shit and, you know, don't impress anybody. You know, the type of people that impresses is the type of people that think timeshare is a good idea, right? That look at a timeshare brochure and say, only 28 easy payments. Well, that is affordable. Think of the money we'd save. Yeah, not good. But whatever it is, like all creative processes, there's a creative table of ideas, and somebody around that table for the prepaid legal guys came up with the concept of, hey, wait a minute. What about if all of the perk events started with the letter B, and we prepended them with the word business? People clapping around the table, you know, yes, yes, yes.
And grandsons having to live 8 hours away in Tallahassee was a big, big problem for this defendant. And this defendant made it Charlie Adelson's problem to solve. And although the divorce between Wendy and Dan Markell was final a year before the murder, throughout that year, litigation is still ongoing, to say the least. Each side is continuing to routinely file violations of the custody agreement, violations of the settlement agreement, and that continued right up until Dan Markell's death in 2014. A few months before the murder in 2014, Dan Markell alleged that the defendant, Donna Adelson, was disparaging him to his children. He was very worried about her trying to alienate him from his children. She was doing this by calling him stupid in front of the boys and telling the boys that Dan Markell was trying to take them away from her. Dan Markell asked...
Yeah, what was she hoping with that? I mean, they were incredibly young. How are they even, you know, going to begin to interpret that on a meaningful level? You know? Stupid's calling. Oh, stupid's on the phone. Is she hoping that they'll go back and start calling him stupid to his face? It's like insult by proxy. I don't know. She's trying to take my sunshines away. What?
Asked the court to prevent this defendant from having unsupervised contact with her grandchildren. And this motion was still pending in court when Dan Markell was killed. And the murder of Dan Markell ensured that not having access to her grandchildren would never be a problem for this defendant. And what do you know? About 48 hours after Dan Markel was killed, or after the shooting happened, Wendy Adelson and the little boys relocated to Miami, moved into the defendant's home with her, and the boys started school down the street. And just like that, their father was effectively erased from their lives, and the Adelsons' big problem had been solved. You'll hear during this trial that the Adelson family is a very tight-knit family. The defendant, her son Charlie Adelson, and her husband Harvey Adelson actually all worked together at their family's dental practice. The defendant, Harvey Adelson and Charlie Adelson are dentists there, and the defendant managed their accounts at the office. She was the details person. And this defendant, though, she managed much more than just the office for the Adelson family. She was the matriarch, and a domineering one at that. She ran the office, the home, and the lives of the Adelson family members.
Christina says, referring to Donna, for a woman with a teaching degree, she decided to introduce the concept of hate to two pure, innocent small children and use their father as the vehicle. So sick and distorted. Yeah, I'd love to hear from some of her former students. I mean, was it elementary level she was at? I think that's right. I mean, I don't know how many that would be, but say, I don't know how long she was doing it. I mean, let's just say there's 100 people walking around the United States right now that in their formative education had Donna Adelson as their lead midwife of knowledge, you know. They've gone, where are they all? What are they doing? The only thing I've heard about Donna Adelson is she's got this thing about reciting the presidents, which is just a memory thing. I mean, anyone can do that if you read the list enough times.
After Dan Markel was killed, law enforcement interviewed Wendy Adelson. Wendy Adelson told police, and the police confirmed this, that she was at home having her TV fixed, at her home in Tallahassee, having her TV fixed at the time of Dan Markel's murder. And when police asked her, well, do you know anyone who would have a motive to kill Dan Markel? Wendy Adelson acknowledged that her family had a motive to want Dan Markel dead, and said that her parents had more reason to dislike Dan Markel than anybody else. At one point in the interview,
hey, thanks so much, Miss Myers, for the PayPal contribution to our cause. That's very kind of you, Miss Myers. Yeah. But don't worry, everybody else. If you don't like PayPal, you can support the channel on buymeacoffee.com/True Crime Metrix. Links are in the description, and we would appreciate it. We really would.
Police allowed Wendy Adelson to make a phone call to her parents to let them know that Dan Markel had been shot. And after she got off the phone with her mother, the defendant, Wendy Adelson said to police, well, they acted surprised, so that's a relief.
Yeah, that was great, wasn't it? When she says stuff like that, I mean, she was like high as fuck in that interview, right, Wendy? Especially when she's doing something like, oh no, soap! Please don't do that. It's so late. When she does stuff like the call in front of the victim advocate that she'd already walked all over, right? I mean, she had that victim advocate by the balls. Well, for the most part. Actually, I think the victim advocate, Sarah Latour, was leading the charge on any holding of suspicion or something about this is not right. You know, she's the closest of anybody that came and spoke to Wendy in the interview room that had any feeling, sense, indication. Hey, thanks so much, Addie, for the 5 cups on buymeacoffee.com. Is that Addie Zanone? I bet it is. Thanks, Addie. What does Addie tell us? Addie tells us. And Addie says, hot damn, have a coffee or 5. Thank you so much, Addie Zanone. What was I saying? Yeah, when Wendy does stuff like the call to her mother on camera in front of a, law enforcement person, albeit a victim advocate, but, man, she loves that, doesn't she? She loves that so much that she gets this rush. And when she gets this rush, I mean, it's literally like someone has injected her with a boost, a super boost of something, because she can't contain her fucking glee and just that in a concept, when someone likes that sort of stuff so much, likes blatantly lying so much that they, it's addictive. To someone like Wendy Adelson, that is just like smoking crack, right? It's just like, that is her crack. And, if you ever see that around your life, in your community, at your job, at your home, get out, go away, and stay away from that person, whoever it is. And if it's you, seek help.
When asked by law enforcement if anyone could have killed Dan Markel on her behalf, she also told the police about her brother, Charlie Adelson. Wendy admitted to police that her brother, Charlie Adelson, had joked that he looked into hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel as a divorce present, but decided to buy her a TV instead because it was cheaper. And what do you know?
Yeah, I looked into having him murdered, but, I just bought the jet ski, and it was the time for my annual payment for my dark space. So, I would have loved to have gotten her the murder. But I couldn't stretch to it. Not at that time. Maybe in the future, but for now, have a TV.
The same TV that Charlie Adelson bought his sister as a divorce gift would be Wendy Adelson's alibi the morning of the murder. An alibi, the TV repair appointment that was set up by her parents, Harvey Adelson and Donna Adelson, the defendant. So this path of looking into Dan Markel's personal life to see who would have motive to kill him leads law enforcement to the Adelsons, including this defendant, a woman who vowed to never, 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 never give up on getting her daughter and grandsons to Miami, and her son, Charlie Adelson, who told his family that he'd looked into hiring a hitman to kill Dan Markel, as Wendy said, was just a joke. But if Charlie Adelson was just joking about hiring a hitman, that joke that stopped being funny when Dan Markel was actually killed by a hitman. While the police are trying to investigate motive, they are simultaneously following that second path of the investigation.
I mean, that could happen, you know. That could happen. It's like, you know, if you're going to someone's house for dinner and you think, man, I really hope they're not serving lasagna, you know, because that's pretty common, right? For multiple people. I would say dinner party, but that sounds a little grand. Dinner, you know. And you think to yourself, man, I hope they're not serving lasagna. And you get there, and guess what? It's lasagna. Again. I don't know what it is about lasagna. I think maybe because it's big, and it's like, you know, to cook a whole lasagna for yourself. I mean, I'm sure that happens, but you know, I think people that like lasagna, you know, anytime that they get the opportunity to cook for more than 4 people, 3 people, say if it's dinner for 8, right? There's this switch in people's heads, and they think, hey, you know what would be a great idea? Lasagna, right? But you hate lasagna. I mean, that's happened to me multiple times. So, you know, it's just you could make a joke about a murder and then it happens and it's not you. I mean, that's not proof of anything, Sarah.
By tracking down that light-colored Prius the neighbor saw fleeing from the scene. When law enforcement retraced Dan Markel's steps on the morning of his murder, they uncovered some very chilling surveillance video of that light-colored Prius, fitting the description given by the neighbor, following Dan Markel into the Premier Gym parking lot and waiting for an hour while he was inside, and then following him home from Premier Gym back to Benton Hills. And these surveillance images, coupled with a massive amount of phone and SunPass records gathered in this case, help police track down the exact car used to commit this crime. But police still had to figure out, okay, we got the car, but who was in this car? And why did that person...
When is there going to be the first murder by drone? Because certainly in a country like the United States, you know, unless you're in a fucking hollow in Appalachia, you're on film. You know, or the backwoods of Montana, I don't know, but, you know, if you're in any town or city, apart from Oklahoma and Arkansas, technology is all around you. Surveillance is all around you, except Oklahoma and Arkansas. But in anywhere good, you know, technology is all around you.
Person killed Dan Markel. So law enforcement did a painstaking review of digital evidence in this case. And when I say painstaking, finding this Prius and finding evidence in these phone records was not an easy task. And it took much longer than your average investigation of a shooting, as you'll hear. But law enforcement eventually found that needle in the haystack. They found a number that communicated with the cell tower that services Premier Gym at the exact time when the Prius was there. And it was a number with a Miami area code, and that number belonged to a man named Sigfredo Garcia. Law enforcement examined Garcia's call logs, and they saw that he was in frequent contact with another number that was present at Premier Gym that day. And that number belonged to a man named Luis Rivera. who is a longtime friend of Garcia, and he's also from Miami. They both are. Police then looked at Garcia and Rivera.
You see, this is a great example. Addison Owen says, "Oh my God, I grew up in Appalachia, West by God, Virginia. Swear to God, grew up by Pinch Gut Holler." Awesome. Yeah. I'd love to go there.
As phone records, which showed that their phones left Miami 2 days before the murder, so July 16th. They came to Tallahassee, and on the day of the murder, on the 18th, they followed Markel to Premier Gym. The phone data shows that these men turned their phones off just minutes before the murder took place, and their phones then stayed off for about an hour or so after the murder, until...
You know, their kind of brazen approach to the whole thing, Sigfredo and Luis, you know, I mean, in terms of planning, how do you think that went? You know, I mean, really nothing, right? No consideration. Follow him very closely in a place that surely is being filmed, the parking lot of Premier. You know, just we'll take our own phones. Hey, I tell you what, we'll turn them off just before we kill him, and then an hour later, we'll turn them back on, right? Zero. And, you know, it was quiet on Trescott Drive, but, you know, I mean, there was no attempt, you know, it could have been as simple as, hey, Rivera, I tell you what, you park around the corner, okay? And then I'll sneak in and, you know, do the murder undetected instead of screeching out of the man's driveway. You know? It could have, there could have been more in place.
They were well southbound to Miami, I think around the Gainesville area. The phones turned back on. And then, once they got back to Miami, a bank's ATM camera caught them in the light-colored Prius at a bank drive-thru and caught both of the men in the Prius. So police figured out the identity of the two men responsible for falling.
And it's amazing, you know, like, there's a good segment, I forget which, I think it was probably the first trial, or Katie's trial, I'm not sure, but Georgia Kapman's examining Luis Rivera and kind of lists out all of his fuck-ups, right? And did you rent a car in your own name? And as she's going through all of the things, you just see Luis Rivera kind of go, yeah, that was stupid. You know, he doesn't say that was stupid, but you can feel it in his acknowledgement.
Following and killing Dan Markel. But they continued to look for evidence to explain why these seemingly random men came all the way to came all the way to Tallahassee to kill a man that they'd never met. What or who is the connection between the killers and the victim? The defendant in her emails obviously had demonstrated ample motive to want Dan Markel dead, but how do we get from these two random and hired killers to her? Well, those phone records that I talked about, they revealed that one of the shooter, Garcia's, most frequent contacts was a woman named Catherine Magbanois. She goes by Katie. The shooter and Magbanois have a long history of an on-again, off-again relationship, and they share 2 kids in common. This is Garcia and Magbanois. And lo and behold, these two paths of the shooter's car and the motive, they converge when law enforcement sees that Catherine Magbanua is also one of the most frequent contacts in the phone records of Charlie Adelson, the defendant's son. The same son that she had been nagging to death about his sister being stuck in Tallahassee. Law enforcement also learned that at the time of this murder, Catherine Magbanua was dating Charlie Adelson. So, Dan Markel was a problem the defendant needed to solve. The defendant's son, Charlie Adelson, was looking to hire a hitman to kill Dan Markel. Dan Markel is killed by a hitman. And who ended up being the hitman? The hitman that killed Dan Markel? Someone with a close...
Dan Markel ate the cat that ate the rat that ate the spider that ate the butterfly. What was that book? What was that book? That was like my favorite book. You know, there was an old lady that swallowed a fly. That was it, wasn't it? I don't know why, perhaps she'll die. There was an old lady that swallowed a spider that wriggled and tickled and wiggled inside her. She ate the spider to eat the fly. I don't know why she swallowed a fly, perhaps she'll die. And it goes on and on and on, right? Until they get to horse. And then it ends with she's dead, of course. That is a classic. You know, step aside, Mark Twain. Move back into the shadows, William Shakespeare. There's a new kid in town. I want to see if I can order that. That was great.
Relationship to Charlie Adelson's girlfriend, the father of her children. So you can see how both paths, followed by investigators, charted the way to this defendant. Not only by looking into the motive, led law enforcement to the
Acapella. Good to see you, man. Welcome back. Welcome back. Tom Petty looks puzzled.
Defendant because of her hatred of Dan Markel.
I haven't actually seen it.
And
she's
her
coming up
son's apparent
next.
Efforts to hire someone to kill him, but also looking into that car fleeing the scene led law enforcement to the defendant through her son's girlfriend at the time. So 2 investigations, 1 conclusion. Law enforcement also tried to follow the money in this case, and that was a 3rd way that the evidence in this case pointed to the defendant. Law enforcement reviewed bank records, employment records, DHS-MV records of all the suspects, and saw that in the months after the homicide, Garcia, Rivera, and Magbanua all acquired some big-ticket items. Rivera and Garcia both bought motorcycles and cars. Magbanua got a breast augmentation surgery and later received a black Lexus sedan whose previous owner was Harvey Adelson. Catherine Magbanua's bank records were analyzed, and there was no check ever written or matching cash withdrawal for the car or the breast augmentation. Bank records also showed that Magbanua's account had a huge spike in cash deposits around the time of the murder. She deposited more money in her account in the 5 weeks after the murder than in the entire year before the murder. And this was during a time when there was no record of her being employed anywhere. And also, about 2 months after the murder, this defendant added Catherine Magbanua to the payroll at the Adelson family's dental practice.
Kosher Style says, I actually think Lewis might get out and do good for himself. Maybe he can be POA over Donna and Wendy and Charlie's estates for their canteen money. I had this thought today. you know, as it becomes more and more, well, basically, you know, body cam, every or almost every police interaction is on body cam, right? Every there's dash cam, body cam, whatever. It's all there. And I thought, what if when Lewis gets out and goes back into some criminal underworld, you know, he would probably be arrested again. And even then, you know, this saga story that we've had the pleasure of viewing all these years may never end. We might be following this we might all be following this until we die, you know. It may never end. There's always going to be an update, right? Because usually a criminal will go away, life, no parole, and, you know, we don't give a shit. We don't give a shit about Ezra McCandless. We don't give a shit about, you know, that other one. Michael Dunn. You know, it doesn't matter. But with this case, it's different. So if Lewis gets out, does another crime, gets arrested, you know, we'll be able to see him getting arrested for something that's nothing to do with the Adelson case. And then he may have his own little trial. It'll be like a spin-off series, you know? I'd love that. I mean, I think that might happen, or, you know, he could do a media tour. Valentino suits, the finest hotels, while he goes and talks on all of these shows, right? He could be at CrimeCon, a guest speaker. No, fuck that, a keynote speaker. A panel session of your favorite redeemable criminals, redeemable murderers. That'd be a good list. We'll have to come up with that. What would the panel? We want, what, 5, maybe 5, 6. Let's do 4 or 5. We'll do 4. A panel of 4 criminals. Murderer criminals that actually generally are very likable. You know, Luis Rivera is probably top of the list, but who else? Who else? Are there any others? I mean, it's not very commonplace for a guilty, confessed person that was involved in a homicide that they have this kind of following. You know, aside from the fucking crazy wackos that are sending Chris Watts their marriage proposals. I understand you. Love me. Love me, please, Chris. Yeah, well, what is wrong with those people?
The one that she kept the accounts for, the defendant kept the accounts for. And the defendant started issuing her regular checks from their business account every 2 weeks, despite the fact that she did not work there at the time. Magbanowa didn't work there. Law enforcement noticed that each one of the 44 checks that were written to Catherine Magbanowa every 2 weeks over the course of...
You know, and again, so, you know, if you need to pay Katie, just give her some cash. The checks weren't much. I think it was, I forget, but I think it was about $200 every 2 weeks. I mean, that's not a lot of money for the amount of checks. And again, I do have this somewhere, the list, but you know, give her some money. And yeah, the whole thing is that she wants to get insurance for her kids, so she's got to have a fucking clerical job in a dental office. Well, you know what, Katie? You could just go and get a clerical job in a dental office. It's not that fucking hard, yeah? You sit in a chair, work on a fucking Excel spreadsheet, and answer the phone. And look clean, you know. That's literally it. It's one of the easiest jobs that you could possibly do. You know? It's so not taxing. You know, you could probably do that part-time, get insurance, and have the Adelsons give you a small stack of money that would be the same amount, you know, of washed, stapled money, moldy money, right? I mean, surely that would have been a better option.
The next 2 years after the murder were signed by this defendant, Donna Adelson.
If it were me and I had to pay someone for their part in the murder, you know, don't forget, this isn't said enough. The Adelsons did not think that any of the $100,000 murder money went to Katie. That was never discussed. That was never designed by the Adelsons. That was a deal between Katie and the killers. It's never once even been whispered that Charlie knew about that. So, you know, it's those details, isn't it? It's those details that don't come up in the minds of so many. So many. No one else has ever mentioned it. What was I saying? I forget what I was saying. If it were me, I'd give Katie some money and say, put you on the books at my fucking dentist, you psycho, and have you not work there? What better clue to leave for anyone looking? Hey, look, it says Katie works there, but she doesn't, and she's getting money signed in sequential checks. That looks like a murder payment. Is that a murder payment? You know, that it's easy. It's easy. And it's not even like I'm going on my memory here. I believe I'm correct. Someone can feel free to correct me, and I will accept. But as far as I remember, the dental checks, it wasn't like, okay, 2 years later, when we know that no one has contacted us and we feel like we're totally not under any suspicion. No one's looking at us. It's an unsolved murder. Who knows who it could have been? You know, it wasn't like they made the decision to put Katie on the books after having that span of time as an indicator of their security and their safety from the eyes of law enforcement, right? Because she was on the fucking books almost straight away. August. I think I remember that correctly. Or was it the next year? I wish I had the list in front of me. It's somewhere on our thing, but it's not labeled. It's not labeled, unfortunately.
So, the money was talking, but what about the suspects? Law enforcement wanted to know what they were saying. In examining the phone records in this case.
You know what I said earlier about the slide that sounded like General Isom's thought process as he approaches the beginning stages of the investigation? What was it? Motive? Shooters in a Prius? I think Sarah Dugan really should have made a theme of that throughout, throughout the development. She's describing the events, the investigation, the developments, how they went from one thing to another to another. That, it's supposed to be in layman terms, right? So what better way to think like a layman than to think like General Isom and have him do the chapters, chapter to chapter. Motive. Shooters in a Prius. What are we on now? Wiretaps. Wiretaps.
Law enforcement noticed a distinct pattern of communication surrounding important events or dates in this case. The phone calls always went from this defendant to her son, Charlie Adelson, and then from her son, Charlie Adelson, to his girlfriend, Catherine McBanois, and then from his girlfriend, Catherine McBanois, to the shooter, Garcia, and then back the other way, like train cars. They only seem to touch the car directly in front.
I love this thing in Kosher Styles' message. Let me read it. I heard someone, and then in parentheses, a lawyer, say a few days ago that John LaRoe probably won't represent Wendy through a trial, and she can't get Casey Anthony's attorney because he's tied up on two high-profile trials. Okay, I just want to separate these two things. Now, I don't know if it's irony or not. I think maybe not. But this thing that people do, and it's very common, right? It's very common, where they go, that you'll be talking to someone about the case, right? And you'll have an opinion, and they'll have an opinion, and they're different. And then that other person says, I heard this said by a lawyer, so it's correct. This thing, that people do is very funny, very funny. But I don't know if anyone else knows what. Maybe that's just in my own head that it's funny. But yeah, a few days ago that John LaRoe probably won't represent Wendy through a trial. Well, I'm not going to argue that he definitely will, but I certainly don't see why he wouldn't. He might. He might not. I mean, he might put someone in place. I'd like it if he did. But yeah, I mean, that probably won't. I just don't know why anyone's thinking on that line yet. She hasn't been arrested. It's been a month since Donna's, more than a month, it's the 13th today, at least for me. So, Tuesday. Tuesday is Donna Adelson's, what is it? Hearing, case management hearing. Not sentencing, case management hearing. I mean, I don't know what that's going to look like. What have they got to do? Have you completed the pre-sentence investigation report? Are you prepared for sentencing? Okay. What, then you're going to fucking book in another appointment? I mean, do you know what that's going to cost? Just to get it together? I mean, what? What's the fucking hold up? Life. Bye. It's statutory. So it is written. Life. No parole. Goodbye. I think it's fucking ridiculous that we can't just draw a line under this. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to doing something else, you know. There's something about the hype around this case that really bothers me, you know. Bothers me to be part of that machine. Don't get me wrong. I love the fucking case, as you know. It's great. But as it's become this major commodity, this consumer, Adelson, I just fucking hate it. You know, we've come so far away. Well, not we, not you, guys, and us, and me. Not us, but others have come so far away from the point of looking at any of this shit. It's just a soap opera now. You know, there are thousands of cases to look at that are all important. And we need to do some more. I've been thinking about what to do, you know, I mean, next. And I've been thinking about Courtney Clenny, you know, her trial starts on December 1st, so it's last I heard at least. I've been thinking, do I want to look at that live and, you know, like we did with Donna's trial? I don't know. I don't know if I like doing that at all. You know, might just be better to do short, sweet updates as we move through. I don't even know if it's going to be that good. What have we got to talk about? Her drinking, her shouting and yelling, and racist fucking abuse. I mean, fucking hell. You know. Find my phone! Find my phone and charge it! Go to Subway! Get my order! Fucking hell. If I were, what was his name? Was it Christian? I think it was Christian, I forget his surname because it's Nigerian and I don't remember what it was. If it were me, there would be a criminal case. There would be a criminal case. It just wouldn't be my own death. It would be me throwing Courtney Clenny off of the balcony. Anyway, we might cover that. Because it is kind of funny to listen to her doing all that shit. I mean, imagine, she's probably had access to the discovery, but there's something very different about looking about the type of reflection that comes from looking at your own worst shameful behaviors on video. There's something different about doing that yourself or with your own attorney compared to looking at it with a room full of people and on a broadcast with millions of others around the world. You know, there's a different kind of reflection. So that might be interesting. So maybe we'll do that. When is it? What date is it now? That's like 6 weeks away. So we've got time. We've got time to do other stuff, right? Should we do Michael Dunn? I've been wanting to do Michael Dunn for so long. You know, it's got so much, that case. It really has. You know, yeah, maybe we're going to do that. We'll see.
Front and directly behind them. The defendant never calls her son's girlfriend, Catherine McBanois, or the shooter, or vice versa. Charlie Adelson never calls the shooter, or vice versa. So, if this is a murder for hire conspiracy, as law enforcement suspects, could it be that the defendant and Charlie Adelson are wisely insulating themselves?
Acapella says, are courts open on Columbus Day? All but the Italian ones. The Italian courts are all closed.
From the actual shooters by having McBanois act as the middleman. Law enforcement decided to launch an undercover operation designed to clarify who are the members of this conspiracy and how information.
So do I have that right, Michelle? Michelle says, Justice Jane. They changed it for the reason that Metrix just said, because murder 1 is mandatory life and there is no need for a sentencing hearing. Well, the other charges, I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous, but say, for instance, I mean, it does happen that at some later point, not too later, because obviously she'll be dead soon, but say in 6 months, evidence came up, exculpatory evidence that vacated Donna's murder 1 charge. In some fantasy. The sentences for the not lesser, but I suppose they are lesser, but that's, the other charges. Conspiracy to commit and solicitation. I think that was the bunch, right? I'm presuming that those aren't mandatory life, and a argument on mitigating and aggravating factors could influence how lenient or not the judge would be for those sentences. We saw that with Denise Williams, right? She was originally sentenced to first-degree murder, convicted of first-degree murder, and conspiracy to commit murder. So on the first-degree murder, she got mandatory life, no parole. And on the conspiracy, she got 30 years. But after her murder 1 charge was, revoked, taken away, vacated, and she was left with just the 30 years. So had she had more mitigating factors for her conspiracy charge, what I'm saying is they got to have a sentencing hearing, right? Even though it's mandatory, the other charges aren't. And in a situation where the mandatory charge was vacated, she would be left with those, not mandatory sentences. I don't know. I mean, Charlie had a sentencing hearing. So As far as I know, there's this hearing tomorrow, and then there's going to be something else. But now you're making me question.
Was traveling within the conspiracy. Police applied for and received court authorization to listen in real time to the phone calls of Charlie Adelson and Catherine McBanois, the people in the middle of this train car. And this is what's known as a wiretap. By this point, though, it was April of 2016. It took about 2 years to do this investigation to find out who was in the car and to get this wiretap going. So at this point, it's been 2 years, almost 2 years, since the murder. And at this point, in April of 2016, Charlie Adelson and McBanois are no longer dating. They'd been broken up for over a year. Catherine McBanois at this point is actually back together with Garcia. We heard they're on again, off again, and have these kids together. Charlie Adelson has moved on he's had many other girlfriends at that point since McBanois. And Charlie Adelson and McBanois, though, they are still friends. They remained close friends since their breakup, and they're still in regular communication by April of 2016, even though they're not together anymore. Rivera, the second hitman in that Prius, was in prison by this point, doing time on an unrelated charge. And the defendant is happily taking care of her grandkids all day, every day. So all the members of this conspiracy have presumably gone on with their lives.
Yeah, Christina, I mean, that's probably exactly what she will get. Life plus 60. But, you know, like I said about Denise Williams, it does happen where, I mean, it almost doesn't mean anything for Denise Williams either, because I think she was just shy of 50 years old when she went in. So that 30 years, you know, she'll be pushing 80, 80 when she can be released. You know. There's this great, has everybody seen the letter that Denise Williams wrote to the court? And did she read it out? I think she might have read it out herself to Judge Hankinson, who presided over the joint trial of Sigfredo and Katie in 2019. He's since died. But, you know, it basically said, I've had time to reflect, and I want to say I now know that my plan was really wrong, and it was wrong, and I want to get out of prison.
Hey, bro, I'm gonna fucking fuck up where the fuck you fucking with me.
They've gotten away with me.
Hey, Carrie Sue, thank you so much for the 3 cups of coffee on buymeacoffee.com/True Crime Metrix. Carrie Sue says, great job. Well, thank you, Carrie Sue, and great job with our cups. What was I saying? Yeah, Denise Williams basically reads out this letter that says, in summary, I realized what I did was wrong, and I'm really sorry, and I want to get out of prison so that I can continue to come back into prison, but to do prison ministry, to help others. Okay. Yeah. She wants to influence women. I think it was specifically, targeted to women. She wants to help other evil women, not, to not be evil, horrible women, right? I mean, that's kind of the point of her letter. And the judge, I can't remember at what point, whether it was 4 years in or whether she said it early and suggested 4 years, but she had the fucking nerve to suggest to the judge, like, yeah, I know you gave me 30 years, but I was thinking maybe 4. Can we do 4? And then I'll go and help others, help other evil women? And the judge is like, no. It's 30. 30. No reduction. Yeah, that was funny.
Murder. So what reason would they have to be discussing the murder at that point if police are listening in? They wouldn't. So police needed to stage an event that would generate some conversation, some activity between the members of the conspiracy so they could see who the members of the conspiracy were. Their plan was to send an undercover agent.
Ah, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Michelle. You see, I'm out of touch with all of these updates. I mean, not that I watch anyone else, other channels, anyway, because I can't. No, I have a look. If someone new pops up, I'll have a look and check them out. But as far as the main things that I can't do it. I'm gonna fucking hang myself if I ever have to watch one of those people again. Hang myself from my balcony. Kill me now. But yeah, okay. Judge Everett decided that they are going through with sentencing tomorrow. Excellent. But it's tomorrow, like Tuesday, right? That's what you mean. Monday 13th, Tuesday 14th. I'm pretty sure it's the 14th. Is that correct, Michelle? Michelle has the facts. That's good. I was pissed off that they were going to make this drag on. We can just close the book. Close the book.
Posing as someone on behalf of Luis Rivera, he was the hitman who was incarcerated by April of 2016, to walk up to the defendant, Donna Adelson, on the street.
Okay, sorry, Michelle. I wasn't arguing your point. I'm a little behind with the comments. Hey, Blu-ray. Blu-ray River. Doesn't that sound like a great blues name? You know? Blu-ray River. John Lee Hooker and Blu-ray River. That's his band. That'd be the band of John Lee Hooker, right? The Blu-ray River Band. The BRBR. Which is rhythm and blues backwards. Twice. Yeah. John Lee Hooker with the Blu-ray River Band.
Won't leave me alone. To walk up to Donna Adelson on the street and try to blackmail her for money. Law enforcement refers to this as a bump. So, this undercover agent posing as a blackmailer, and this is an actual picture from the surveillance cameras, that this is the undercover agent passing a piece of paper to Donna Adelson back in 2016. This undercover agent is posing as a blackmailer. He hands the defendant a piece of paper.
Donna Bowen says, Metrix, could you tell us the ending of the movie again when you pick up Lewis from prison? I love it. I don't know if I can do it right now, Donna. But maybe we should. I'm kind of looking for something different to do, you know. I mean, I guess we are different here at True Crime Metrix. That's the point. But you know, and I like doing looking at stuff and talking about it with you all. It's great. But another thing, maybe we should do a rough outline of the entire script, because I've got a great opening to the movie as well. Really good visuals, no dialogue for, minutes, but it would feel long, which is basically Wendy waking up in the house on murder morning, on July 18th, 2014. And as far as the viewer sees, pretty average morning. Pretty average morning for a you know, what do you call it? Academic woman in her mid-30s with 2 kids. Actually, the kids aren't there, so that doesn't come into it. But, you know, I just see lots of cuts. A clock, toast popping up out of the toaster, getting ready for the day, right? But just throwing in little notes of tension and timing where if you already know the story, you would understand what's going on in her head, even though there's no dialogue, right? The sort of opening that on your first watch, if you're watching cold, don't know the story, is mundane. But if you watch again, after knowing the relevance of those little notes of tension, it would be good. It would be very good. You know. There's more to it. But we should do the whole outline of the Adelson movie script and then just do an episode where we talk it through like a storyboard, but interactive. I like it.
And on the piece of paper is a news article about Dan Markel's murder. And written on the piece of paper is a phone number and the amount of $5,000. He tells the defendant that he knows the Adelsons are taking care of Katie. And he's basically there to blackmail to get more money out of them or out of her on Rivera's behalf to even things out because he knows they're taking care of Katie. He never says Charlie Adelson's name or anything about Charlie Adelson to Donna Adelson. The defendant then puts the piece of paper in her purse and walks away without ever looking at the piece of paper because she knew exactly what it was about. Then law enforcement listens in to see what
fucking hell, it's Monday at 3. At 3? Okay, so what is that for me? 8. All right. Do you know how long it's scheduled to, last? The duration? We've already had victim impact statements. I suppose there could be others. What's the betting that Zellman is going to stand up at some point and make a statement to the court and the judge about how his client, Donna Adelson, is a woman with no criminal history, a woman that never got so much as a parking ticket? I don't know how many times I've heard that. I've heard that from Donna, in the letters. That's her main thing. Didn't even get a parking ticket. I want you all to remember that I said that because I think we're going to hear it from Zellman tomorrow at 3 o'clock. I gotta catch up with this chat. This is ages ago. All right, let's try and get to the end. Tomorrow is Monday. You see, that's why you're here, Michelle. Tomorrow is Monday. I love that. And it's true, right? Metrix is from the future. Kind of. Well, actually, it's the past, isn't it? I'm ahead of time, but that's all only because my day has already happened. How does that work? If I'm east of you on the on the international date line, then am I in the past or the future, or both at the same time? That's cool. We really need Stephen Hawking to come here and say, what would he say? I have seen many things in my lifetime. Or, whatever he might say. Metrix, you're only 5 hours ahead of us, so it's Monday, right? Tomorrow for us at 3 p.m. EST. Okay, Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Opinion. Carrie Sue says, opinion! Charlie never had a wife because that would have been too much competition for Donna. I've got news for you, Carrie Sue. I mean, for all intents and purposes, Donna Adelson was Charlie's wife. Which is, it's really true, isn't it? Obviously, I am not a mother, but if I was, I think that whatever Donna Adelson was doing with Charlie and with Wendy was disgusting. I mean, it's not even like I guess it's pretty common that a mother will not like anybody her son dates or marries because no one is good enough for my son and you're not going to replace me. And, I guess that's pretty common. But whatever Donna's doing is not that. I mean, it's almost like, I don't know what it's like. It's just weird how she doesn't even think of them as people. So she just brings him horrors, that sort of thing. Donna has a Benjamin Franklin-looking face. I know what you mean. That mouth, right? On the $100 bill. Should we bring that up? These pursed lips. Yeah. All right, I got it right here. Look at the mouth. It's exactly the same. Oh, well, I gotta make $100 bill with Donna Adelson. Donna Adelson's face. Can you imagine if Georgia Cappleman was saying to Luis Rivera, Isn't it true, Mr. Rivera, that you were paid in stapled money, in stacks of $1,000, made up of hundreds with Donna Adelson's face in place of Benjamin Franklin? I can actually see fucking Harvey Adelson coming up with a concept for his dental patients. You know, printing his own customized money, Adel dollars, and you can pay for your treatments in Adel dollars. You know, it sounds expensive, but we give you the best pain relief medical medicine. We give you the best comfort medicine that any dentist will do, because we are not ethical. And we don't give a shit what damage we do to your body long term, as long as we make your smile look nice. It might sound expensive, but part of the deal is that you will have a cash back. 20% you receive back in Adel dollars. And you can spend these Adel dollars on other treatments or in our gift shop. Adel dollars. Doesn't that sound like the kind of thing that Harvey Adelson would come up with? And put his fucking psychotic wife on the hundreds? That's got to be done. It's got to be done. Okay.
What will happen next? Will the defendant go straight to the police to report the blackmail? Or will she do something else entirely? And as suspected, based on the previously observed communication pattern, the first person that this defendant calls is Charlie Adelson, despite the fact that the blackmailer, never mentioned Charlie Adelson to her. On that first call, you would think the first thing that Donna Adelson would say to Charlie Adelson is, "Oh my God, it's so crazy. Some man just came up to me, handed me an article about Danny's murder, and he's demanding money from us." But she never says any of that. In fact, the defendant never says Dan Markel's name at all.
And Rob is a handsome Abe Lincoln. Oh. Yeah. That's great. Okay, I need to write this down, because tomorrow we need to put a really tall hat, beaver fur, on Robert Adelson's head. Man, what is all this? How many notes does this guy take? I don't even know what any of this means. Fuck, a whole book? Gotta go get some note paper tomorrow. Well, here's a blank page. What are we doing? Adel dollars. And Abe Lincoln hat on Rob. Love it. Maybe that's the style he's going for with the hair. What else can we do? And fucking Harvey Adelson can be Eisenhower. Dwight Eisenhower. Yeah. Or who else? Who else? I can't think of a better one.
Instead, she tells Charlie Adelson that she needs to talk to him in person about some paperwork that was just delivered to her. She said that it involves the two of us, and that he should know what she's talking about. The defendant.
You remember the Will Smith song, Just the Two of Us? Building castles in the sky, just the two of us, you and I.
And Charlie Adelson continue talking, and she says that he should bring cash to their meeting. And she says, the TV is probably about 5. The defendant tells Charlie Adelson that the man who approached her mentioned an ex-girlfriend. The defendant never says which ex-girlfriend of Charlie Adelson. She never says Magbanwa's name to Charlie Adelson in that phone call. She only says that the blackmailer mentioned an ex-girlfriend. Charlie Adelson never asked his mom, my ex-girlfriend? Which ex-girlfriend? He's had a lot. He never asked that. Because as the evidence will show, he didn't need to. He knew the TV is probably 5 meant that she was being blackmailed about Danny's murder, where the TV was the alibi, and he knew that the ex-girlfriend in question was the only ex-girlfriend that he had solicited to find a hitman for him, Catherine Magbanwa. And we know that because after this call with his mother, the defendant, Charlie Adelson, calls Catherine Magbanwa. He does not call his most recent ex-girlfriend or even the one before that. He calls Catherine Magbanwa. And his call to Catherine Magbanwa is the only call he makes to any ex-girlfriend after getting the information from his mother that the blackmailer mentioned an ex-girlfriend. And he hadn't dated her for about 1.5 years at that point. And although they threatened to do it very often, neither Charlie Adelson nor the defendant ever reported this attempted blackmail to the police. You all will hear the calls between the conspirators, and
Matt Mello says, what would they sell at the gift shop, the Adelson gift shop? Owl t-shirts? I think mainly it'd be like, fake bling. June Umchinda's steering wheel in her Mercedes is bedazzled with fucking rhinestones. In whose world does that look luxurious and exclusive? I guess they could have a Latin King section with diamond encrusted grills. Those things that people put on their teeth for some reason. What is that about? It's like a mouth guard for, but as bling. How did anyone come up with that and make other people think that it was a good idea? I don't understand. It's to make it look like your teeth are made of diamonds? You wouldn't be able to eat anything. Huh? Chewing a steak would sound like, I don't know. Breaking glass. I don't know. Yeah, no, it would be something tasteless in the Adelson gift shop. Tasteless that, you know, morons think is exclusive and luxurious, which isn't hard to do in Miami, so I've heard.
As you listen to these, you'll notice that they're being very cautious about what they say. It's apparent that they're being very careful about the words they use because they are all immediately suspicious that law enforcement could be behind the bump. Law enforcement could be the person who came up to them on the street and gave her the paperwork. And law enforcement could also be listening to their conversations. After Charlie Adelson's first call to Catherine Magbanua, Charlie Adelson then meets up in person with his mother, the defendant. And in person, she gives him the paperwork that this blackmailer gave to her and makes it Charlie Adelson's newest problem to solve. And naturally, what does Charlie Adelson do? He goes to the next train car, Catherine Magbanua. Charlie Adelson and Catherine...
Yeah, Bill Withers. Bill Withers, the original, sure. Yeah. No, I like Bill Withers. But, you know, it's... Lovely Day is so fucking one-dimensional. You know, that's great. Don't get me wrong. It's great. It's great. It's great. But I always find myself waiting for it to go somewhere, you know? Like it's just this melodic loop. That's the thing. It doesn't really have, you know, a great song should have stages and chapters. You know, there's a formula. But what, you know, Bill Withers, for all of his talents, you know, basically made elevator music, right?
Catherine Magbanua meet in person at a restaurant called Dolce Vita in Miami. And while they sit at their table in this busy, noisy restaurant, an undercover FBI agent is sitting at a table nearby with a camera hidden in a bag, recording the conversation. So this is an image from that video recording the conversation. And in the recording, we hear Charlie Adelson discussing whether the man who walked up to his mother could be an undercover police officer, or he could be someone trying to legitimately blackmail them. And if it's a blackmailer, is it somebody who just saw a way to make a quick buck? Or is it another situation entirely, which would be much worse for the Adelsons? Is it actually someone with inside information about Donna Adelson's role in the murder of Dan Markel, and that person could tell police what they know? Charlie Adelson reassures
Hey Brian, how you doing?
Katie,
Fair cloth.
Catherine Magbanua, that if it is the police, that is a good thing. Charlie Adelson thinks that, hey, if it's the police, that means the police don't have enough evidence to charge anybody. You know, they're just fishing for information. And in fact, Charlie Adelson tells her, hey, if they had any evidence, we would have already gone to the airport. It's important to know.
Michelle says, I know, right? Metrix, those bedazzled steering wheel covers are so cheesy, and certain women think they're classy. But people who say classy never have any, my opinion. Yeah, I mean, if it was something that had been, you know, custom made by Mercedes, you know, like when you get into a Rolls Royce, as much as I fucking I can't stand any of that shit myself personally, even if it's done well. You know, statement luxury is just like, okay, you know, why are you doing this? But anyway, Rolls-Royce, if you get in, it doesn't feel cheap, I can tell you. You know, it doesn't feel cheap, certainly not, right? Because why? Because it's been made by fucking Rolls-Royce to your specifications. Because you're a fucking shitbag billionaire. I mean, but in Junum Chinder's case, it's different, right? Now, we don't know whether she ordered that little badge for the middle of her steering wheel, the Mercedes emblem in fucking rhinestone fucking diamonds, sequins, I mean, or if she just went to a, what do you call it, hobby craft and bought a little packet of stick-on fucking plastic shiny shit and actually sat in her fucking driver's seat and took the time to stick each of those little things on around the Mercedes emblem. Either way, it's shit. It looks shit. Nobody has ever sat in her car, looked over at her steering wheel and said, wow, that looks amazing. That looks really good. You know how we know that? Because if we did, other people would do it. It's cheap enough, anyone can afford. You know, I mean, oh, I don't understand.
Note that at the time of this conversation at Dolce Vita, no arrests had been made in this case. And the only thing that police had released to the public at that point was a photo of the light-colored Prius that fled the...
You know, you like, give me Gil Scott-Heron any day, Christina. You know, Angel Dust, The Clan. What's that other really good one he does? The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. What's that main one he does that's really, really good? I gotta go and get me some Gil Scott-Heron. He's got that great one about the mines as well, you know? Working in the mine, working in a mine. No, working in a graveyard 3 miles down. Come on, Gil Scott-Heron. You see, that guy didn't make elevator music. That guy was a fucking bona fide poet. And look, nobody's got a problem with Bill Withers. At all. You know, great. Great for when you're going to the fucking 20th floor of a building and you need something to occupy your mind for those 20 seconds, you know. Lovely day, lovely day, lovely day, lovely day. Great, fantastic. But when I get out of the elevator, I want to listen to Gil Scott-Heron because it's better.
Scene. Police knew at that point that it was Garcia and Rivera who were in the Prius, but the public didn't know that yet. So that fact is interesting in light of some of the things that Charlie Adelson started saying.
Use me up. Yeah, I have to remember the lyrics to that. I do remember that being better than his usual hits.
Magbanois. He starts giving her several analogies involving rental cars being used to commit crimes. He reassures her that the police can't prove a person committed a crime just from someone's DNA being in a car that was used in a crime. In order to prove someone committed a crime, you have to be able to put the person at the scene of the crime at the time it was committed.
I disagree, but it was of the era. Well, the era. I'm fine with the fucking era. Don't worry about that. I'm expert in that era. That's my era.
So he's trying to reassure her that even if they identify who rented that car that fled the scene, they still would not have enough evidence to hold anybody responsible for this murder. Charlie Adelson also says that crimes are tough to prove unless someone actually witnessed the suspect commit the crime, or the suspect confesses to the crime, or a suspect is caught on a wire talking about the crime. So he's trying to reassure her about the lack of evidence in this case, about no witnesses, and trying to let her know that, hey, as long as we all stay quiet and nobody confesses or gets caught talking on a wire, then we don't have anything to worry about. And he begins educating Catherine McBanois about how blackmail works. He tells her that, hey, if this is a guy who knows information, there's two ways of dealing with this guy. You know, we could call the police, but then the guy blackmailing us could be charged, and then that blackmailer is going to start talking, and the police are going to be asking questions about what happened. The other option is to pay the blackmailer, but let him know that this is just a one-time thing. And we'll try to scare him off by saying, if you come around again, we'll go to the police. Charlie Adelson gives McBanois very precise instructions on how to deal with the blackmailer. He tells her to call the blackmailer and tell her that my friends, meaning the Adelson family, have no idea what you're talking about, and I'm just going to give you this money as charity, but don't contact these people again or they'll go to the police. And Charlie Adelson said he would give McBanois the $5,000 to pay off the blackmailer who approached his mother, except that he's concerned that this guy won't go away. He'll get that $5,000 and then he'll just keep coming back for more money. We'll see him as an easy target. And so Charlie Adelson then offers that the best solution might be to have the blackmailer killed, and that he's willing to pay whatever it takes. He says, so help me God, if they F with my family, it's going to be Nazi shit, because this will be done. I mean...
I'm trying to think that if I was pretending to be a gangster, so help me God, if they fuck with my family, it's gonna be Nazi shit, because this will be done. I mean, what is that? Did he prepare that? Or is that the kind of thing that just comes out when he's in character? You know? I guess he didn't prepare it. But, you know, there's something kind of funny about thinking about Charlie Adelson composing, you know, these little nuances on a Skyline chili napkin as he's finishing his bowl. You know, what should I say to Katie to make myself sound tough, really tough? I need to be tough and like a gangster, threatening like a gangster, tough, and I should say, so help me God, if they fuck with my family, it's gonna be Nazi shit. Like he's, you know, like writing the rousing St. Crispin's Day speech from Henry V. You know? Oh. It just comes out of him, right? It's so weird. Like, who's the toughest actor that ever there was? I mean, I guess it's Gene Hackman. I mean, it must be Gene Hackman. Who's tougher than Gene Hackman? Nobody, right? So, if you want to sound tough, and you're thinking about saying something, like, so help me God, if they fuck with my family, it's going to be Nazi shit because this will be done. You've got to, as your prep, as your test, you've got to read it as if you're in the mind of Gene Hackman. And if it doesn't work, it's no good, right? I want everybody to close their eyes and think about Gene Hackman in his Mississippi burning prime, saying the words, so help me God. If they fuck with my family, it's going to be Nazi shit because this will be done. You know? It doesn't work. What else? Clint Eastwood. John Smith nominates Clint Eastwood. Well, yeah, I mean, sure. Nobody's taking anything away from Clint, all right? Nobody. Nobody would try. Edward G. Robinson. Mitchum, as in Robert Mitchum. I never really thought of Robert Mitchum as a tough guy. But I'm mainly basing that on his performance in Macau. Charlton Heston can fucking do one. Yeah. After his admirable speech at the National Rifle Association, I think we're done. You're finished, Heston. De Niro was only tough in Deer Hunter. Everything else was a comic book. Marlon Brando, okay, I'm down with that, 100%. Tonka! Tonka is back. Welcome back, Tonka. Yeah, nice. Charles Bronson. Yeah. Lee Marvin. Yeah, absolutely. I was just about to say that. What's that movie with Lee Marvin, you know, in his fucking silver suit, where the first, 8 minutes is him walking down a hallway? You know, it's fucking brilliant. 8 solid minutes of, you know, close-ups of Lee Marvin's feet and wide shots of him coming down the hall, walking with purpose and intention. Brilliant. Brilliant.
Katie, I don't care what I spend. And after hearing that Charlie Adelson wants someone killed and is willing to pay whatever it takes to get it done, Magbanwa then asked Charlie Adelson to help her out. And Charlie Adelson reassures her she'll be taken care of and reminds her.
Do people actually buy Sylvester Stallone's thing? I mean, I never have, not once. You know? I've never seen Stallone do anything that's good at all. That's funny how people think, you know. The reason I put Gene Hackman at top billing for the toughest actor ever, he's just got so much grit. That's really him. Like, that's not acting. He is that tough. That's why it's so effortless, you know. Brilliant.
She's on salary at the parents' dental practice. After Charlie Adelson finishes this meeting where he's getting Magbanua to then solve the problem of the blackmailer, he gives her a, they say...
Wow, look at that. Look at that picture. I got to zoom in on that. So that's the Mercedes there. It's a high-end Mercedes, huh? In 2015, it was probably, what, $150,000 minimum? Charlie and June in this little bubble of bliss at the dealership. At the dealership. Everything about him, huh? The sunglasses he chooses. The style of t-shirt he chooses. His pose. I mean, what is that? I'm a little teapot?
Goodbye. He gives her a big hug that's captured on camera outside by the FBI.
Why are there twins in the dealership in the foreground? Are they brothers? Their hair is exactly the same. They even get it cut on the same day, so that as it grows, you know, they're never out of sync at all. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hey, Metrix. We can tell that the guy in the gray on the left has slightly darker hair. That's just the lighting. His t-shirt isn't gray. It's white, just like his brother's.
FBI, and then Charlie Adelson immediately calls the defendant to let her know everything's fine.
Hang on. Who said that? That's not June Metrix, it's Katie.
Problem of the blackmailer. He
Yeah. God, they look similar, don't they, at that time? It is Katie. Really, like when it's small, it's difficult to tell. I had to make it really big to see Katie there. But when it's small, there's nothing that tells me it's not Junam Chinder, you know what I'm saying? Crazy. A man with a type.
gives her they say goodbye. He gives her a big hug that's captured on camera outside by the FBI. And then Charlie Adelson immediately calls the defendant to let her know everything's fine and he has handled the situation. He does this using some pretty obvious code words that you'll often hear these conspirators use to mask the meaning of what they're talking about in case law enforcement's listening. Magbanua then, also using code words, calls Garcia, and she tasks him with calling the number on their paperwork and finding the identity of the blackmailer. And in the series of recorded calls that y'all are going to hear later this week, you'll hear these conspirators talking and using words like TV, relationship advice, false leads, listings, patients, properties, clients.
Yeah, I need some relationship advice about my TV. We haven't been getting along at all, you know. And it's so funny, right? Because with code words, for people that don't know how to use them, you might as well not bother, because you end up, they always end up doing this thing, especially with Charlie and Katie, where it's like, hey, you know that mixtape that I recorded, you know? Oh, yeah, no, real good hits. No, yeah, real good hits on my mixtape. Yeah, I can play it to you. I'm looking forward to what you've got to say about the good hits on my mixtape. You know, it's like, why are you nudging every, like, oh, it's just so funny.
Rap songs, CDs, pigs, all these terms that are obviously normal words. But
yeah, Gene Hackman was in French Connection. And he was in French Connection 2. Popeye Doyle.
They're used in context that, if you're listening to the conversation, don't make sense. So, after that undercover operation was over in 2016, Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia are arrested, and they're charged with the same charges.
Why does this look like the poster for some sort of circus act? You know, what would be their act if you went to the circus and you know, the next performance was undertaken by Sigfredo Garcia and Luis Rivera. Maybe the trapeze, you know, where they swing down and one goes into the hands of the other, and then they flip over the top of the swing. You know, terrifying. Wouldn't that be terrifying? Be great to see. I hope I have a dream about that one day. Is it the trapeze? Is that what it's called? Am I thinking of the right thing? Some fabulous gymnastics performance. High up, way high up, Luis and Sigfredo doing the circus trapeze. The bit that everyone has come to see. All that shit at the beginning, no one cares. This is the main event.
Before y'all on this trial, Luis Rivera, who was the second person in that Prius, cut a deal with the state and told law enforcement the truth about the murder of Dan Markel and the people responsible for it. He told police that he was hired by his longtime friend Garcia to help kill Dan Markel. Rivera described how Garcia told him that this was a job that Magbanua was able to get for them, and it was in Tallahassee, and it paid $100,000, and that Rivera was going to get a third of the money. Rivera said that during the trip to Tallahassee, Garcia had a piece of paper with a picture of the man that they were hired to kill and some handwritten notes. And during that trip, Rivera said that the first call that either of them made after the homicide was from Garcia to Magbanua, where Garcia told her that the job was done and Magbanua assured them they would get their money the next day. which they did, that Magbanua brought the money the next morning to Rivera's.
Hey, Jackie, which president are you? How many have we got now? We've got Ben Franklin, Abe Lincoln, and Dwight Eisenhower. And this one, I don't know. She'll have to be a first lady. The first lady to William Henry Harrison. Who can tell me his wife's name? President Petty. Wow.
Home. And law enforcement checked cell phone records, which corroborated Rivera's information. Law enforcement told police that the money that...
Okay, Rick Raguso has shown some very good insight here. I 100% agree with this, completely. I don't know how you've done that, Rick, but you've nailed it. I mean, Rick says, Sigfredo reminds me of a lion tamer, and Garcia, a human cannonball. That is so accurate. You know, you put each of them in the other's role, it doesn't work, but in this role, it does. With Luis Rivera wearing one of those it's like a one-piece swimsuit, ladies' swimsuit, but for circus workers. Luis Rivera holding a big hoop for a lion to jump through. Sigfredo climbing into a cannon, being fired across the... Yeah, 100%. I'm impressed, Rick.
he received from Magbanua the next day was packaged in a very unusual way. The money was basically in stacks of 1,000.
Jackie looks like Andrew Jackson. Okay, now we're really building up the dead presidents, right? The money presidents. Who else have we got to get? I mean, does Hamilton count? I think he's a treasurer or something. Washington, Lincoln, Hamilton, Jackson, Grant. We need Grant. Who is going to be Grant?
Each stack was made up of $100 bills that were then stapled together. And after each stack was stapled together of 1,000. And after learning this from Rivera, Magbanua was arrested, and that was in October of 2016. During this trial, you'll hear that the Adelson family had access.
Thomas Pedersen. Yeah.
To a lot of cash because their family gave cash discounts at their dental practice. Like if you paid in cash, you would have to pay less than if you paid on a card.
Harley D says, well, TCM, are you going to make it to Wendy's trial? Well, I hope so. At the moment, I'm behind with my payments to the lawyers that are helping me enter the country. Should we start a goal? I feel a bit guilty as I've been absent. Well, we'll start a goal. every little helps. We gotta build up. I mean, I'm gonna have to contact them and say, well, these payments, they've not been made, But you have had a lot of money already, so when do you need this? When do you need this by? And I still got to go to fucking Lisbon to do the FBI fingerprint thing. Yeah, it's quite a chunk. It's quite a chunk. And at the moment, I'm fucking splitting dental payments. Okay, listen, dentist. I know that on your bill, my bill, it says this much. But what if I gave you half now and half next week? And they were fine with that. But yeah, I don't know. Seems like a big hill to climb.
Check. And they kept the cash that they received in stacks, and they stored it in a safe. Law enforcement also learned from Charlie Adelson's friends that Charlie Adelson had a very unusual practice of keeping his money in these $1,000 stacks that were stapled together, just like the money Rivera received. And over the last few years, since the 2016 arrests of Garcia and Rivera in May, and then of Magbanua in October 2016, law enforcement has not stopped working on this case. 3 years after Garcia's arrest, in 2019, he was convicted at his trial. Law enforcement continued, though, to gather evidence. They continued to interview people who may possibly have information and to clarify all of these recordings the FBI did that couldn't be clearly heard. And thanks to their tireless efforts, in March of 20...
What do you think that's like for families of people like Pat Sanford, for instance? Holidays, vacation away, little Caribbean break, Pat Sanford and his wife have gone to the Sandals Resort, and they're drinking some fucking god-awful tropical cocktail with 15 paper umbrellas and a whole bowl of fruit flown into it. And while they're sitting on one of those ridiculous bars that is inside the swimming pool, so your bar stool is effectively underwater, she's trying to talk about where they're going to eat tonight, what activities they would like to do, and he's nodding along, but really in his mind he's thinking, yeah, stapled money. They were paid in stapled money. It's like, can't get his mind off the case at all. Thanksgiving comes around. Pat Sanford is about to cut the turkey, and he pauses. I wonder if when they followed him to premiere, it's like, oh, yeah, it must never stop. And it went on for ages, but his whole career's been like that. Georgia Kappelman, on the other hand, I think has a wonderful, I would presume has a wonderful ability to separate her professional and family lives, right? Just turns it right off,
2022, Charlie Adelson was indicted. 2 months later, in May of 2022, Catherine Magbanua's case went to trial, and she was convicted. During Magbanua's trial, Catherine Magbanua took the stand, and she insisted, this is back in May of 22, she insisted she had no knowledge of the murder. The Adelsons must have just gone around her to hire the hitman directly. That's what she testified to. Her defense team insisted that the state's theory was correct about every co-conspirator except for her, for Catherine Magbanua. That Catherine Magbanua was just this victim of bloodthirsty and desperate prosecutors and investigators, and just a victim of this set of circumstances that appeared to prove one thing, but was actually, the truth was something else entirely. However, after being convicted at trial and sentenced, Magbanua finally decided to testify about the plot to kill Dan Markel and admitted that she was the connection between the Adelson family and the killers hired to kill Dan Markel. Magbanua testified in Charlie Adelson's trial in October of 2023 and said that Charlie Adelson wanted to hire someone to kill his sister's ex because his mom was stressed out over all of the problems his sister was having with her ex-husband. Magbanua said Charlie painted a picture that Wendy's ex was this terrible man causing his mom so much stress that she couldn't sleep or eat. Magbanua agreed to help him and ended up recruiting her children's father, Garcia, and also Rivera to kill Dan Markel. She says that the night of the murder, she went to Charlie Adelson's house to pick up the payment for the murder. And when she arrived, Charlie Adelson said that his parents had just been at the house and that Charlie Adelson had the money for her there. Law enforcement was able to corroborate this claim with phone evidence showing that Donna Adelson went to Charlie Adelson's house the night of the murder. Magbanua then spent the night with Charlie Adelson that night, and the next morning, on July 19th, he put the money that she was to divide.
Yeah, my mom was just over and she dropped off the money. She dropped off this little money pillow. You know, I sleep better when my head rests on $100,000 in cash. It's an Adelson thing. We've always done it. She was going away for the weekend to Tallahassee, and she dropped off my money pillow, like she did when I was a boy.
Divide up into the trunk of her car. Magbanua says several things about the money stood out to her. She said it was stapled together in stacks of $100 bills and that it was damp like wet. She then delivered the money to Garcia and Rivera afterwards. When Catherine Magbanua said that when she asked Charlie Adelson about the money being damp, he said that his mother the defendant, had actually washed the money, and that she and Charlie Adelson kind of laughed about the fact that the defendant had literally washed the money so it couldn't be traced. In Charlie Adelson's trial...
Well, they didn't need to do any, DNA swabs because it was stapled. It was packeted with your signature money stacking medium. We're going to sign each one. All the Adelsons. Wow, I wonder what that would be worth, huh? If you could prove it. If you could prove it to a collector that there was one stack, right? One stack of still stapled by Adelson hands, smelling of washing up liquid, detergent. You know, a stack that was used in that payment for the murder. I bet a lot of people would be interested in that. I actually thought about going to the bank or the Bureau de Change and getting $1,000 American in cash, just so I could staple it and experience that, just hold that that little packet, Charlie's signature. I don't think it's really worth my time, and I'd probably lose about 33 euros in the exchange rate, so that's probably not a good idea.
Charlie Adelson took the stand, and he testified that Magbanua, Garcia, and Rivera were all in on this crime.
But we'd also like to do a test. We'd like to do a science test on how long washed money, when packeted in a sealed plastic bag, takes to go moldy in as close as we could replicate to a southern Floridian climate, which really isn't that far off from an Algarvian climate. We could make that happen. But of course, they all have air conditioning and we do not. What else? What was our other test? Ah, yes, a Sarah Boone test. Toilet wine. Toilet wine, actually made in the toilet. Authenticity to the bone. You know, it's pretty easy, I've heard, right? Bits of fruit, a little bit of apple, a little bit of orange, half a grape, you know. And then little pinches of bread. Couple of packets of sugar. And you let that do its thing. How long would it take? What would it taste like? I don't know how I might be able to test the, proof percentage. Might be fun.
Together, but that the Adelsons had nothing to do with it. They were the innocent.
And Adel dollars are absolutely coming. I'm going to print some. We're replacing Ben Franklin's face with Donna because they look exactly the same. It's the lips. That's the main thing. The big pursed lips.
Y'all in this trial, Charlie's interpretation of the facts was not reasonable to believe, and he was convicted. Charlie Adelson was convicted in November of 2023. And within hours of his guilty verdict, this defendant began to plan to flee the United States to a country that she could not be extradited from in order to avoid being arrested for Dan Markel's murder. The defendant on her phone researched countries that did not have extradition treaties with the United States, and she applied for an emergency visa to Vietnam.
Hi, Daisy. I am trying to get a fast-track emergency visa for Vietnam. I filled out everything out on the online application. I filled out everything out on the online application out. I am trying to get out of the country out. Oh, man. I know she was going through a stressful time, right? Whether we're looking at the crazy emails to Wendy about the divorce or, jet setting to non-extradition countries. But man, she makes a lot of fucking basic errors. For someone who looks down on Tallahassee natives as if they are a subspecies, that prides herself on, these, I don't know, does she pride herself on education? Well, she certainly prides herself on believing that she's cleverer than everybody else, but, you know, those errors are bad. I filled out everything out on the online application. Out. Get out. I am trying to get an emergency, fast-track emergency. God, how many other things could she embellish? I am trying to get a fast-track emergency, quick-fire. What else could you say? Instant. I am trying to get an emergency, fast-track, instant, quick-fire visa for Vietnam. How many more? What else could you say? To just make that go on and on. I am trying to get a fast-track, emergency, needed yesterday, quick-fire, instant visa. Quickly. As fast as I can.
She was overheard planning to put her money in trust for her grandchildren, and she and her husband purchased one-way tickets with a fast-track emergency visa to Vietnam.
Oh, don't worry. If the audio was cutting out, I lost internet for about 3 seconds. It just went off, but I put it back on, and here we are. Sorry.
And Vietnam does not have an extradition treaty with the U.S., as she would have learned from her searches. And just days later, she was stopped by law enforcement on the jetway in Miami International Airport, where she was boarding her one-way flight to Vietnam. And she was then charged for her participation in the murder of Dan Markel. After the defendant was charged, law enforcement received information from women who said that the defendant, Donna Adelson, was offering them bribes in exchange for false testimony in this trial. They said Donna Adelson promised them money, housing, veneers, prescription drugs, if they were willing to...
Yeah, right. I love that Georgia mentioned that, confronted with a screenshot like what Sarah Dugan just showed. I'm trying to get out of the application out. I filled out. But aside from the mistake, the urgency at which she's saying, I am trying to get an emergency fast-track, quick-fire, instant, must-have yesterday visa to Vietnam. Georgia said something like she oversold with her thing of, listen, we wanted to go to a peaceful place. We've been to Vietnam before. Our friend from the Gourmet Swingers Club that's been to 185 countries worldwide, said that it was a very peaceful place. He said good food, good people, good peace. So we went there because we needed peace. It was ridiculous. Overselling. Georgia said it. It's like, yeah, you should have just said, well, yeah, I mean, we didn't know what was going on. We knew we didn't have a warrant. We knew that we were permitted to go. It would have been better. Because when she does that kind of lie, like ignores evidence like this of quick-fire, visa, emergency, obvious urgency, panic, when she denies that and says that it was not what it seemed, it's not that we were in an emergency panic, it was for the peace, the Vietnamese peace. It just brings her whole thing down, doesn't it?
To testify that Catherine Magbanua told them a completely different story about the crime than the one that she would be testifying to. One informant was even able to show law enforcement a script, a question and answer session for a direct examination in trial that Donna Adelson herself wrote, and that Donna Adelson wanted this informant to memorize and come into court and perjure herself by reciting it to you here in trial. Please listen to all of the evidence that y'all are going to see and hear in this trial. I know it's been a long week already, and we have a lot of evidence for you in this case, but when you do, you will see that this defendant conspired with her son, Charlie Adelson, who solicited his girlfriend, Catherine Magbanua, to get this murder done. And then this defendant paid her with cash, with checks for the job once it was completed. The defendant acted in furtherance of this murder plot that went beyond just thinking about it or just talking about it. And these acts make her guilty as a principal to first-degree murder, just as if she was the one pulling the trigger in the garage herself. And while the defendant's choices helped solve a problem within her family, they came at a very high price. She took the life of a loving father of 2 little boys and caused a lifetime of grief for Dan Markel's loved ones. And at the conclusion of the evidence in this case, you will be convinced beyond any reasonable doubt that this defendant is guilty. And at that point, we'll ask you for the only verdict that does justice in this case, which is a verdict that this defendant is guilty as charged. Thank you.
All right, briefly approach.
How's it going, Ben? Hey, Ben. What about this, what about these bifocals, Ben? They make me dizzy. I thought you said it was a good idea, Ben. What about this fucking printing press? It's noisy. You know? We had to build a separate house to put it in. It's so fucking noisy. Your bifocals are shit. Your printing press is shit. What else has he got?
The defense gives its opening statement. We are going to take a brief break. The bailiff will take you to the jury room.
Did he say break or cake? We're going to have a brief cake. We're going to have our mid-morning cake. But save room for the lunchtime cake. Yeah. Wait till you see what we're having this evening. It's cake, but with butterscotch. Yeah. No need to use a spoon. Use your hands.
Or the observers need to use the restroom. Please do so at this point, so that way when the defense is ready, we can continue moving on seamlessly. We'll resume again at 10:20.
I wonder if frowning Harvey has lost his perpetual frowny face and is endlessly smiling now that Donna has been put away. I'm free. Yeah, I mean, I would be. I wouldn't have even gone. I'd have made up some fucking story about my hip, you know. Oh, your trials this week? Oh. Doctor says no movement. No movement below my waist. No, I'd love to be there. I'd love to sit for days on a fucking pew, eating nothing but pickles. I'd love it. On a normal day, I would be there. I would be there. But hip. But I really think they are, you know, their branch of codependency, this sort of, you know, fucking binky in the brain, evil plotters. You know, that is their lifeblood. Harvey probably doesn't know what the fuck to do. She's not coming out? Well, who am I supposed to, you know, do my schemes with? I got a long list of money-grubbing schemes to work on, and I usually work on those with my evil wife. Now I don't know what to do. Great job, Sarah Catherine Dugan. She did a great job. I think that was the best run that we've seen her. You know, that was the third time we've seen Sarah do the opening, and I mean, they're all good. They are all good. But this was a good one. Brian Faircloth, we miss Metrix when he takes an unannounced hiatus. Oh, God. How am I going to tell you guys what happened? I feel like it should have its own show. Seriously. But it's also kind of, I don't know what the word is. Awkward. I guess my thing is that I suppose that some, or many, might have dealt with this situation in a harsher way. I don't know. I need to think it through. Well, you know, I don't mind giving explanations, Michelle, but it's also I mean, well, it may be interesting. I don't know. I mean, it certainly contains crime. It certainly contains a crime. Not by me. Adel dollars. I love that. I love the Adel dollars. Did I get put out in YouTube timeout for a few days? No way. No way. Not at all. Safe and protected. Yeah, I'm safe and protected. I try to protect others. You do what you can. You do what you can. I mean, you have to, right? If you can, then you must. If you can, then you must. I mean, that's part of, you know. Maybe, what time is it? It's 6 a.m. And today is you think with this time away from YouTube, I might have actually gotten some sleep. Not true. I've actually had less than than doing YouTube all night, you know. How does that work? But just before the show, I slept from about 9 o'clock until midnight, and then started getting this together. But it was the first night in all of the time away where I could have actually gotten more than 3 hours sleep. But I had to come back. I had to come back sometime. And it's just, you know, we do have some other stuff coming. We got to do some more concepts with the trial. I think yeah, it would be probably wisest to cut it off there tonight. I mean, how long is Jackie's opening statement? It's going to be, I think it's at least 35 minutes. Or 45. So we'll have to double that. That's going to take me up to 7:30 a.m. Yeah, it's probably better to end here. There's something about that trial. But what? What is it? And there is, isn't there? We all know it. We all saw it. We were there. And tomorrow is the day, Donna's day. And of course, there's not going to be any old lady candy cane cardigan bullshit. She looks like Mr. Peppermint Man with this fucking, with these collars and these patterns, you know? She has never worn anything like that in her life. Within reason, you can have what you want. It's all part of this stupid thing. This stupid, I'm a little old lady. I'm a little old lady doing a puzzle on the porch. Puzzle porch, lady, old lady. Innocent lady, old lady, puzzle porch. I've got my knitted cardigan. I've got my Peppermint Man shirt collar. You know, Harvey went and bought all that on command of the lawyers, right? We need to dress up. We need to dress Donna up like an old lady, innocent lady, doing a puzzle on a porch. You know, the kind of old lady that eats grits for breakfast every day, soaks them in water for 20 minutes, and fries them. You know, grits. Maybe he should go for 1/3. He's in his 80s now. 1/3. 1/3 of what? Perhaps Rich Harvey will jet off to Vietnam and settle down with a nice Vietnamese woman, half his age, who will take care of him in his dotage. And later inherit his money. Well, it certainly worked for Kelsey Grammer. It certainly worked for Kelsey Grammer. And that other one, something Gibson. Wendy 2 arrested this week or not at all? Well, you know. We'll see. I mean, are they in a rush? Is there a rush? There's some logic to if it's in the bag and coming, doing it after Donna's sentence, but yeah, if it's next week or in 3 weeks, I mean, it could be. See you later, Blu-ray River. Do you own a harmonica? I think Sarah Boone doesn't have that much patience or ingenuity. Ingenuity. She goes straight for the hand sanitizer. Oh, it's funny that should come up, yeah. What an embarrassing way to be dressed on your way out. Oh, nice, Michelle. I like that. Yeah, right. I mean, this is her last representation that others will see. This is their final memory, that cardigan, that Peppermint Man shirt. And this sagging skin. And, not just of an old lady, but an old lady that used to have all of that sucked out of her face, but can't do those treatments anymore. Good night, John Smith. Thank you, John, for coming here. The thumbnail of her is horrendous. Isn't it? Isn't it? Donna's face is melting. Melting like a candle. And I suppose she has been in solitary all of these days, all of these 30-some-odd days, right? No reason to be putting her in Gen Pop. She wouldn't have been on suicide watch for that long, but, certainly in solitary confinement. Yeah, well, we'll be back here at 3 o'clock tomorrow, hopefully. Got to cover that live. Finish it all off. Yeah, there's a few more obvious things that we've got to go through. I'm going to do the jailbirds. The jailbirds will be a nice pair of an episode, and the lawyers, those bad, horrible lawyers for Donna's witnesses. What else? There's a few more things to cover on the trial, and then we're moving on, all right? Makes me sad how much people milk this as a commodity. But I'm no different, am I? But we've got to promote other crimes. We've got to promote other trials. We've got to promote other interrogations, right? There are many. It's not just Wendy Adelson. So many. Okay, guys. We're just about 3 hours and 5, so we will look alive and go to sleep. again. And hopefully sleep more every day. Thanks for coming. Thank you to chatters, super chatters, super coffee people, super moderators, the best moderators. Golly, we've got the best moderators. Acapella, Michelle de Mateus. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Come again tomorrow, live on True Crime Metrix. I hope Wendy gets arrested soon, though, Metrix. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I've been dreaming about it, you know? But, yeah, I mean, does anyone else feel like this kind of, you know, what is the word? Pressure, atmospheric pressure. You know, like when you're in a really stuffy room that's too hot and smells like old books or damp laundry. You know what I mean? Those old rooms, those hot old rooms, dark, dingy, moist, hot, humid. That's what I feel like thinking about the whole case, pretty much, the whole case. So as much as I am, of course, looking forward to a Wendy arrest, news, video, trial, everything, I really want to take a break. I want to take some time away. Not time away from YouTube, but time away from the case. Other cases. We've got to do it. What's happening currently? Any high-profile stuff? I mean, there's a few things, but yeah, we got the Courtney Clanny in December. But I want to do some older ones, man. Anyway, that's a thought for another day. We're going to say goodnight and have a safe drive home. Thank you, everybody. True Crime Metrix out.